Hi everybody, this is Agnes from Sediment, and today we're going to blind taste highly rated wines from some of the world's most influential wine critics to see whose palate aligns with mine. This video was inspired by one of you guys, Mr. Pierre Philippe, who pointed out something really interesting, that wine critics sometimes completely contradict each other. And that raises an important question: who should we really trust? Is there a critic who consistently scores wines higher, or someone who is notably harsher in their ratings? And it's true, in one of my long format videos, Talk Under the Wine, I discussed this very topic with some of my industry colleagues. I had a copy of a wine journal in my hands, and you could see the same wine scored 95 by one critic and 80 by another. So who to trust, we might ask. Before we rush to criticize those who evaluate wines for living, please remember that it is not all black and white. There could be several reasons really, but first and foremost, it highlights the fact that there could never be 100% objective wine score. However, I really liked one of your comments that took a more philosophical approach, saying that as long as wine critic believes they are being truthful and objective, you would perceive their review as an objective assessment. But if we put the philosophical part aside, one reason for score variations is simply that we all have different sensory thresholds for various elements in wine. Just recently, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who said that she has relatively high tolerance for volatile acidity. If the person judging next to you has low tolerance for VA, your scores will naturally vary, sometimes dramatically. In other cases, some wine judges value different quality factors than others. For example, I was reading Fino and Manzanilla tasting review by some of the world's most influential wine critics. And you could see it in their descriptions. One critic highly valued wines that were not intensely filtered, praising their extra depth and body, often scoring Enrama styles higher. By the way, if you want to know what Enrama means, let me know in the comments. I have been working on the Ultimate Jerez Guide video for the longest time now, and I just might need a little push to finally finish it. So to respond to Mr. Pierre Philippe's comment, without tasting the same wines that all these critics have reviewed, and without knowing how they actually assess wines or what they prioritize in quality, I can't really say who is being generous and who is being mean. But while typing my response to your comment, I had an idea. Why not put this all to the test? Let's find some of the highest rated wines from James Suckling, Wine Spectator, Wine Advocate, you name it. Taste them blind and find out, do I actually agree with their scores? We were brainstorming the best approach to tasting, and in the end we decided that all the wines would be chosen by my cameraman. So the only thing I know is that all the wines have been scored 95 or higher, and that I have 2 whites and 3 reds. But before we start, I want to say that this is purely my opinion. I will try to be as objective as possible, but at the end of the day, these wines will be tasted through my own experiences and preferences. And really, who am I to say that my opinion is better than James Suckling's or Robert Parker's? The truth is, this tasting is not about proving someone right or wrong. It is about seeing which critic's taste aligns most with mine. By the end of this, I might just discover which critic's scores truly match my own taste, and whose taste I can trust the most next time I buy wine. Shall we move to the tasting? Like I said, these wines were chosen and poured by my cameraman, so I don't know anything about them. So let's start with wine number 1. I'm really nervous. Okay. On the nose, I would say that this wine is quite shy. You kind of have these delicate elements of lime and lemon, a bit of lime zest, that kind of greenish element, and some hints of white florals, white blossom. But there's also a lot of energy on the nose. Let's taste it. Wow! On the palate, this wine is packed with a lot of freshness, zestiness, and acidity, but at the same time, it also has that body, but it is slightly linear in style. You kind of have a bit weight on the mid palate. There's some green element that kind of sticks on my palate. It feels almost like phenolic grip. You feel a bit alcohol on the first sip, but it is playing quite nicely with a fresh and kind of crunchy style of fruit. The alcohol and the mid palate suggest that this is coming more from a sunnier climate. It is difficult to give points to the wine without knowing the price of the wine, because for me, price plays a critical role here. But I do think this is premium priced wine. It definitely offers that depth of flavors, that length of flavors, and I will give this wine 92 points. Let's move to wine number 2. This is super intense on the nose. Like, you don't even have to dip your nose in the glass. It is just so intense, so out there. And it shows you this really ripe stone fruit character, like yellow plums, like really ripe, full of juices, lemon. But there's also depth of honey or beeswax. And see how deep is the color here. Wow. It definitely shows some bottle age here. Yeah, I could just smell this wine alone. It's really intense on the nose, absolutely beautiful. And what a palate, wow. There is concentration, intensity of fruit on the palate. It is just so, it is really interesting wine because it feels big and opulent and really linear and kind of fragile at the same time. I like this wine, and it has that kind of beautiful, really high, mouth-watering acidity, but you almost don't feel it because it is just so beautifully wrapped within all that fruit on the palate, and you kind of want to have a second sip. Because of the intensity on the nose, it definitely seems an aromatic grape. Because of the high acidity, I would want to say that this is Riesling. And it is super high quality Riesling. It's not austere, so there's some of that ripeness there. I really enjoy this wine. I will give this wine 98 points. It is definitely at the top. The aftertaste is beautiful. I don't feel alcohol here at all. It is just perfectly balanced and absolutely beautiful wine. I like it a lot. So shall we move to the red wines? Wine number 3. Okay, so this wine, it seems to have seen some age, and it shows some garnet color with a bit of orange hint. And on the nose, there's a lot of kind of crashed, slightly oxidized fruit characters, but all those berries are kind of red berries, but they're slightly dried, maybe, slightly dried cherry, raspberry, strawberry. And there's a hint of leather, some dried spices, dried herbs, like rosemary, nutmeg as well. There's a lot of happening on the nose here. It is really complex. The nose here is really complex. So it shows all these primary and secondary elements, but it also shows a lot of tertiary elements. So I would want to say that this wine is 5+, 8+ years old, for sure. Let's taste it. Wow, what an acidity. You rarely expect that kind of freshness and zestiness in red wine. And it just was so complex on the nose, and then it was just so bright on the palate. It almost seems, I don't want to say unnatural, but it just has all that freshness, that liveliness on the palate, despite showing that really complex nose. The tannin here is just so beautiful. I would want to say it's just masterfully done. It is chalky, it is grippy, it adds this beautiful texture to the wine, but it is part of the wine. It is not overpowering, it is not standing alone, it is just part of the whole wine. And acidity is something that is maybe kind of giving this wave of freshness to you. And I don't feel alcohol here. Like, it is beautifully integrated. I would say it's medium, around 13.5. And yeah, but the nose is something that you really want to pay attention to and enjoy. I think this is definitely amongst the top wines, and there are very few places where you can find wines like this. So I think this is one of the classic winemaking regions. Think Tuscany, think Bordeaux, think Rioja. I would just expect much higher tannin here for Tuscany and way deeper color for Bordeaux. So I would want to think that this might be Rioja, and definitely amongst the top producers. I will give this wine 96.5. Is it allowed? 96.5 points. Beautiful wine. Shall we move to wine number 4? Okay, so this is completely different. The opposite. This is deeply colored, fresh, intense blueberry, mulberry nose. Wow. And such a bright fruit flavor. It was just a punch in your face. Like, you have this really calmed down, kind of savory wine, and then you have this, which is just kind of screaming in your glass. Just kind of fresh, bursting with juices, blue and blackberries. Wow. This is also really intense and really kind of dense nose. It's just so out there. Do I smell some of the toastiness? Maybe somewhere behind the fruit you have some of that toasty element, that kind of toasted skinned almonds, like zero bitterness. But the fruit is what shines here. It just jumps out of the glass. Let's taste it. Okay, so on the palate, actually, this wine is much calmer. And even though I don't feel the acidity as defined as in wine number 3, you actually feel that the saliva is coming back, keeps coming back. So it is fresh and lively wine. But what I really liked here was the tannin. It is quite chalky. And you know, all that fruit that I described on the nose before and all that deep kind of violet almost color, it takes you straight to Syrah. But Syrah usually has, in my view, high levels of tannin, but the tannin is quite ripe and kind of caressing, kind of velvety on the palate. And for this wine, the tannin kind of shows a bit of edge. They're a bit maybe grippier in style. I think it is absolutely beautiful wine. I do enjoy it a lot. I will give this wine 94 points. Let's move to wine number 5. Okay, so this wine is standing somewhere between these two. So it does show that kind of beautiful, ripe blue and blackberry nose, but it also shows slight leatheriness, like leathery elements, slight savoriness. Like in wine number 4, we had all that really ripe and kind of juicy fruit just picked from the bush. But here we have kind of similar ripeness of the fruit, but it has been crushed or it has been sitting on the table for a while. So there is some of that oxidation here. But there's also some, I don't know, there's some like third element under the fruit. Like you have all that leathery, that kind of slight maybe kind of saps, fresh mushrooms, or like truffles. Let's taste it. Oh wow. You are full-bodied, you are rich and opulent. Wow, and here alcohol is kind of really present. It is part of the wine. It just kind of defines wine. You feel it, it is warming. It is definitely not disturbing though, because you kind of have that really high alcohol, but you also have like fruit standing next to it and being proud with all those flavors, you know, and all that character. And this is, yeah, full-bodied, rich and textured wine. Slightly spicy as well, so you kind of have here some of that garrigue element as well. The tannin here, you have that chalky texture. It is a bit more than just being playful, but it is also not defining part of the wine. And on the palate, it almost seems sweet fruit defined. It is not sweet wine, but it kind of, that lushness of fruit, that ripeness of fruit, it just takes over your palate. I do enjoy this wine. I will give this wine 96 points. It comes from a warm, sunny climate and definitely from Europe, I would want to say, because of that savory character. I don't want to say more. Okay, let's reveal the wines. Wine number 1, I gave it 92 points. Maybe it is opening up. Okay, so this is Eisele Vineyard Sauvignon Blanc 2019 from Napa Valley. This must have cost you a fortune. It says here it has 97 points from James Suckling and 96 points from Robert Parker or Wine Advocate. So I actually scored it so I was actually the mean lady here behind this wine. Maybe it's something that I should retaste. It's 14.3 alcohol. So I said that maybe the alcohol was also present here in this wine. But I think this wine, I think it is above 100.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, let's move to wine number 2. For those of you who might be thinking that I know this wine, so this is the Coravan cork. So I don't know like where it's coming from. I just know that it is a tall bottle. Let's reveal it. Nigl! I love Nigl. I've visited Nigl. I own hundreds of apologies to Nigl. And this wine says it's 100 points by James Suckling and 97 points by Falstaff. And this is Hochacker 2021 vintage Riesling. I did enjoy this wine. I visited this estate. It is, they make absolutely beautiful wines. And I would want to say that this might be value. Is it around like 50?
A little bit above.
Above 50. So maybe, you know, when you get 100-point score, perfect score, it usually means that your wine will go up in the price. But like you can taste different wines from this estate, from this producer. They just make absolutely beautiful wines across their range. So you don't necessarily have to spend 50 or 60 euros for a bottle. But I think this was actually wine that was my favorite of all the wines here. It kind of shows you that I love my Austria and that I love my Riesling. Shall we move to wine number 3? I was really being smart with this wine. I said it was 96.5. Vina Tondonia, so Lopez de Heredia, Vina Tondonia Reserva 2012. So this wine is actually 13 years old. I said 8 plus. It has 96 points by James Suckling. It has 95 by Robert Parker, Wine Advocate, 95 by Tim Atkin, and 95 by Antonio Galloni. So I was the most generous here because I gave 96.5, although there's like difference like between 1.5 points. So I think it is really honest score. I love this wine. I think it is one of the top producers, definitely, from Rioja. They offer great range. I think Vigna Bosconi is one of my favorite when it comes to value. Why I love this producer specifically is because they do not raise their prices significantly. It is the secondary market where the prices are actually really high. So when you go to Rioja, when you go to Spain, if you can find these wines, if they're not sold out, you will get them for amazing price. I remember I bought some of the white wines from them for just kind of surprisingly low prices. And I think this one, It could go around, I don't know, like
50.
50, okay? Maybe better price in Rioja if you can find it. It is one of the reasons to go to Rioja for sure. Should we go to wine number 4? Craggy range. Okay, Craggy range, Syrah, single vineyard, Hawke's Bay, Gimblett gravels. All right. So this one has 97 points by Decanter World Wine Awards. And I gave it 94, so I am definitely below. And I was being really mean here, apparently. 2020 vintage. So wine number 5, which was all that power, all the lushness of fruit. I gave this wine 96 points. Oh, Raymond Usseglio. I have also visited this estate. It was absolutely beautiful visit, and they make amazing wines. And so 97 by Robert Parker, so Wine Advocate, and 95 by James Suckling. So I was in between. I was with 96 points. So 96 points would be the average here for this wine as well. And yeah, I think this producer, they just make gorgeous wines. And if I'm not mistaken, that this one comes, yes, this is the label. So this one comes from more than 100-year-old vines. Can you imagine? But what I wanted to say, similarly as with Nigl, their entry-level wines offer just great value and super high quality. I've tasted their Lirac, and it's just like, it is closely to the quality as this Chateauneuf-du-Pape, maybe not as dense or intense or not as concentrated, but it just packs a lot of flavor there as well, a lot of concentration. And they're just like, it's like 20 euro wine. And this, I guess, because it's Chateauneuf-du-Pape, it usually costs 50 and above, I would assume here as well. We did not discuss the price of the Craggy range. I would assume that this is the best value amongst all 5 of these wines. It costs the least for you.
Yeah, around 25.
Okay, so around 25. So this offers you amazing value and 97 points by Decanter World Wine Awards. Amazing. And I think you can quite easily get it. They're available in international markets as well. So here you go. It seems to me that I am with my scores a bit harsher than maybe other wine critics. And it is difficult to give wines 100 points. That is the issue, actually, because maybe I have to retaste this wine and think and ask myself, what is this wine missing to be 100-point wine? And if it's actually, and if the answer is that it's missing nothing, then maybe I was being harsh there as well. But this is issue everywhere. You cannot go too generous with 100 points. So I would say that for majority of time, there are wine critics who will hold back, including myself. I'm not wine critic though. But rest of the wines, I think we scored quite, yeah, especially with red wines. I guess it was kind of the middle ground, no? Oh, yeah, I was really mean to Craggy range. Who will I trust the next time I'm going wine shopping? I will trust my cameraman because these were really beautifully chosen wines, for sure. So let me know in the comments which wine critic you trust the most. Maybe he or she was not mentioned here today in this tasting and I should find them out. And this is not the only 100-point wine that I have tasted here on my YouTube channel, so make sure to watch next video where I tasted 2 100-point wines against each other.